Always
Always
watching.
watching Wazowski.
Wazowski, you didn't file your paperwork last night. Oh, that silly darn paperwork. Sorry. Hello and welcome to episode number 27 of the Real Life Podcast. Today we are once again joined by one of the most knowledgeable, skilled, eloquent, charming, and talented people in the world, sister.
Is that genuinely? You're not going to say that you planned for somebody else?
Did you not hear the gag?
Oh. Oh. Oh, this is such a dick.
Are you more pleased this week with my methodology of acquiring your services for the podcast?
In that you gave me more than an hour's notice?
Yeah, and that it was actually you this time that halted progress on us doing this rather than me going, hey, do you want to do a thing in an hour?
Yeah, it was. How did I halt the progress? Remind me.
You had like illness.
I had illness. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have been thinking about this for a few days at least. I can't tell you how coherent those thoughts are, but that I've been having them. So there we go.
Okay.
It's better than
Well,
last time.
I've also got a bit of higgledy-piggledy mesh stuff about this, but
Delightful.
what we're doing, Verity's
Hmm.
back in the pod because today I needed someone who's just as much of a nerd about this particular topic as I am. Today we're going to do something which I think is probably nigh on impossible.
Mm.
We're going to try and get to the bottom of this season of Doctor Who. What's happened to it? Was it any good? What are the reasons for what it did? All of it. Um, so that's where we're going to head today, and I'm going to kick off. I've got some subheadings that I want to talk through in terms of all the elements, but I'm going to kick off with this thought for you, V.
Hmm.
For the most part of this series,
Mm.
like it's rubbish, isn't it?
Blanket statement. Do you know what? I'm going to say no. I'm not going to say rubbish. I'm going to say flawed.
Mhm.
And I'll be totally honest. The more of Shirley Ballas that I see, the less I enjoy it.
That was on it. That was the absolute cherry on the. Oh, for fuck's sake!
Yeah. Do you know what? Genuinely, they could chuck Johannes Radebe into anything, and I'd be
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, here
Yeah,
for it."
yeah,
And
yeah.
the moment Ballas appeared, I was like, "Oh, and you've lost
I'm
me.
afraid it was a
You've
case.
lost
It
me."
was a case of oh.
Oh, oh, oh. She's
Um.
there.
So I think you're, rubbish is harsh, and I'll come on to that. I think rubbish is harsh, but
Come
I think it's had a huge weird identity crisis over the course of the last series. But this whole discussion does have to come with a caveat that I don't want to do the whole thing of it's different and it's not the thing that I liked from 2005, and that's not good because I don't like change.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not doing that. And also, you know, with Doctor Who, that makes no sense because the nature of the show is it's indefinitely changing all the time.
Mm,
So that's not a real criticism because I've loved it when it's been very different from one to the next to the next to the next and all that kind of
mm-hmm.
stuff. So, um, but I may have to accept that this version of that change is
Mm.
not for me.
Yeah.
So let's start with sort of broad thing. Let's start with the stories.
Oh, can I start even broader than that?
Okay, go on.
I feel like this season isn't anyone's baby. You know, like each season has started, and I felt like writer, showrunner, whatever, it's been someone's like baby. They've been like, oh, I've been wanting to do this for ages. This is so exciting. Give me free reign. I felt like um Christopher Eccleston, like that whole story around Rose was like, I felt like that was Russell T's like baby. He was like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. I really want to be able to do it. I'm really excited to be able to like bring this to life. And then as soon as Matt Smith started, like the 11th hour and that story with Amy Pond, that was like Moffat's baby. And he was like, oh, we want to do this for ages. And then Chibnall, you know, say what you want, but like at least he was like, oh, this is what I'll be wanting to do. I want to have it in Sheffield. I want to have it in these places. I don't want to focus around this. It was like his baby. And I feel now like it was no one's like child. No one was like, oh, I've been waiting for years and years to let this out because Russell T's like fantastic, brilliant, amazing, but he's had that opportunity to be like, I've been waiting forever to do this and now I'm going to do it.
Okay. In which case, I too will start somewhere different
Okay.
because I've got a different perspective on that. I think this is too much of Russell T's baby.
Ah.
The enemy of art is the absence of limitations.
Oh, fuck off.
Orson Welles, right? Listen.
I did not come here for culture.
What the
What
what?
the fuck
Listen,
is
listen.
this?
I'm gonna try
I
and
came here to
apply.
complain about things and prove to 3 people in Brazil why I'm single. This is not why I came here.
I'm gonna try and inject some sort of intellectual film-based discussion into this, but
Please.
I do wonder, with a hugely increased budget and the title of being the nation's premier television writer,
Mm,
I wonder if someone needed to stand over him with a big stick. I obviously have no space to give Russell T Davies script notes. Like, who even am
sure.
I? Okay. But I have to ponder the possibility that there was no one who stood in his way on this season. And that
Okay.
isn't always the liberating thing that you think it is, even if even if you are taking hold of a series as your child, as you said, right? Which I
Mm,
totally understand. I just don't want there to be a great big "don't question the genius" label on him.
mm.
I think he got the chance to be a bit too giddy. And this sounds really stupid, but I think the show needed to calm the fuck down. Which brings us primarily, and this is obviously a case study,
It
but
needs to chill the fuck
it
out.
does, yeah. But it's a case study, but it's indicative of a lot of the series itself.
Okay.
The giant racist eating slug in the room of this series, which is musical numbers.
Oh, I despised the musical numbers. I was gonna this was an entire point of mine actually
Sure,
as well.
yeah.
Should we start in a more positive place before we berate everything?
Well, it
Or
depends. It depends because my overarching feeling for the series is very much split in a certain way.
mm,
Um, but I do want to start with this point because I think it's thematically relevant to everything.
okay.
Um, I again, not to be all that's not what Doctor Who is and be all protective and fanboy about it because that's no one likes that. But
Hmm.
whose idea was that? Because
Yeah, no, absolutely. But also, well, let's address the serious point here. Why
mm,
on earth, why in the name of Jesus Christ did you cast Jonathan Groff in a show where you have had musical numbers and not give him one of the musical numbers? Like,
Jonathan, you know that musical theatre you're really good at. Do you mind just being really emotionless for this entire
yeah,
episode?
and we're gonna
I
give it
know.
to Shirley Ballas instead. Like,
Okay, right.
what?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Listen, Shirley Ballas aside, right? Um, that episode is the pinnacle of what I'm talking about
Which
because
one? Bridgerton or Beatles?
no, Beatles,
Beatles.
whatever it was called,
I haven't paid
uh,
attention.
some whatever it was called. But
Mhm.
there's been music in episodes before, of course.
Yeah.
But never have we had the genuine nonsense of a musical number. And that's when
Yeah.
it felt like the show changed and it happened in the Christmas special because
Mm,
it had become something new. And if that's what it wants to be, then so be it. But I won't be on board. The show was always fanciful, wild, pure fiction, but
mm.
it never stopped to make the prospect of us watching a reality of a world come into question. It never
Mm,
stopped to go, it never did the Brechtian thing of going, you're watching a play, you're watching a story, don't be fooled, you're watching a story.
hmm.
And the thing, I'm not
Sorry, can
against
you just
any.
do that dance one more time, please?
The listeners are not privy to the dance. They can't read it. I'm not against Brechtian alienation, but the thing I always thought about Brechtian alienation was they're on stage going,
Someone's
it's not
Googled Brechtian
it's
alienation.
it's not real, it's a story, and I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, I know that. We're 2 hours in and my arse hurts, but it's
Well, the difference, right? So the difference, because I think you can apply this to theatre as well as you can apply this to TV or film.
mm,
Okay, the difference between a musical like number like that and then having music in it before is that
mhm.
before I felt like the characters were very much like in recognition of like, there is music happening here, and as characters and as a story, we will react to the music happening here. The story didn't just like stop to allow
Yes.
the number to take place and then carry on without any kind of progression there.
Mhm.
And that's why, and it feels like Disney stuck its claws in a little bit there. I don't know if that's true, but the point was that Doctor Who was always a bit camp. Like Doctor Who was always a bit camp. Like if you think about the Absorbaloff, okay, one of the campest ideas anyone's ever had.
Yeah.
Like, what if this guy touches people and then their faces come out of his arse? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
And what if this guy is Peter Kay?
oh, what if the guy is Peter Kay putting on a silly voice with a fancy cane? Like that is the campest thing you could come up with. But it was camp with humor behind it. It wasn't camp for the sake of camp's sake. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
well, yes.
It wasn't camp for camp's sake.
And
Yeah.
this is where I think the Russell T thing comes back in, because he's come off the back of Years and Years and It's a Sin, both of which were fantastic stories with fantastic characters, wonderful plot lines,
Yeah.
wonderful messages, liberal tones, lots of LGBT content. It was never I never would have questioned the idea that he was going to come at Doctor Who with a camp angle, because of obviously you'd come at Doctor Who with number one, he's Russell T Davies, he can do what he wants. Number two, he's Russell T Davies, he can write camp. And number three, Doctor Who's always been a bit camp, so obviously it makes sense. It's never been utterly ridiculous since New Who. It's never been genuinely like alienating to a lot of people. And there are people who watch films and TV because they don't personally vibe with musical theatre. There are people who go to the theatre because they prefer that kind of heightened style to film and TV. It didn't earn the right to mix the two. I think it could have done, but it never tried to. What happened was that it went, oh, music themed episode, so let's just break the format and do some music. Well, that's nonsense. You've done thousands of themed episodes and you've never broken the format of an actual you've never stopped us midway through a story to watch us observe something that clearly isn't in the story just because there's a theme of the episode about. And I think it comes from him going, I'm Russell T Davies, so this is what I know, and I'm going to go camp to the extreme. We've got Shoot Your Gat, we're in, so why don't we just go camp to the extreme? Which I get.
See, I hear you, but I disagree there slightly, because
Okay.
I think he's catering for a different audience now.
That is also
I
completely
think
fair.
that the audience that watches Doctor Who, now that you've brought this Disney aspect in, now that we've got a wider scope with America, all this kind of stuff, I think you fundamentally have a different audience. And while I think that there is absolutely room for that in Doctor Who, and I think that's one of the things that makes Doctor Who great, is like, you had Captain Jack from like season 1 of the reboot, who, like, for want of a nicer phrase, would fancy anyone, like would like get with anyone, because that's just the fluidity of life.
Aggressively pansexual, man.
Aggressively pansexual. But like, and all not even like pansexual, like alien, like, do you know what I mean? Like,
I suppose
alien
that
life forms.
I
guess that counts.
pansexual probably
But like
covers that, yeah.
aliens would come up to him and he'd be like, yeah.
My
And
favorite line is maybe later blue when Chandler comes.
okay, just like a human insect, and he was like, absolutely. But like, that's what I mean. Like, there's always been that element. There's always been that space in Doctor Who. But I feel like it's being brought to the forefront or catered for more heavily in this season, and I don't know whether that's right or not.
I everything you've said is completely right. I agree with all of it. But my argument to that point would be, would it not be better for everyone involved if that kind of stuff was worked into story and worked into character?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying it's yeah. We're on the same page there.
That was part of the character of Captain Jack. The first time we meet him, he flirts with Rose. If Captain Jack isn't human, let's not.
Well, no, the first time we meet Captain Jack, he flirts with the soldier that he's standing next to.
He flirts with that
flirts
soldier,
with
and then he goes to flirt with Rose, right? And that just became a character thing. But there's so many things, Alonzo turning up at the bar with Captain Jack in the last episode.
Just watch that episode.
It's brilliant, isn't it? And all this kind
good.
of, but there's so many things that are worked into the fabric of those episodes that are part of the fabric of those episodes, and they are woven in, and they are part of a world, they're part of a story.
Yeah.
They aren't simply because we can or for fun.
Okay.
I'm not going anti-woke on Doctor Who here, because that's a stupid thing to do, but it is vaguely reminiscent of my problem, like I mentioned with Sex Ed 4, is that everyone, while thrilling though it is to see representation for everyone across the board in things. Everyone loves, that's just
Mm-hmm.
so beneficial.
Mm.
But everyone eventually prefers that stuff to be part of character and part of
Sure.
story.
Sure.
And I think occasionally it just missed that in favor of fun camp. And we're all for fun camp, but
Mm.
there's a line where you go, are you detrimenting the story here? And that's when I think Nolan was standing over Russell with a big stick and said, have your camp fun,
Mm.
have uh the the god of music or whoever,
Oh, Jinx
have
Monsoon.
Jinx Monsoon
Jinx is
be
brilliant.
an over the top brilliant character, right?
Mm.
I mean, slightly too over the top occasionally.
Mm.
The wink at the camera, I out
Oh
loud
no,
went,
that I did a ball.
I
Yeah.
out loud just fuck off,
Yeah.
because this is the prop that's so indicative. It's
Mm.
like, who, and then have Jinx wink at the camera because everyone likes Jinx. Yeah, everyone
Mm.
does like Jinx,
Mm-hmm.
but everyone doesn't like foregoing what the hell, no TV show is foregone just for the sake of one person in it,
Yeah.
like the format of Doctor Who has always been observing a story, watching these characters make their turns in a maze. It's never been, and they know you're there, because that's not what it is.
Yeah.
And a musical number is, and they know you're there,
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Sure.
because
Absolutely.
because if you were just watching on,
No, I'm agreeing with you. I feel like we
yeah,
can move on. I'm agreeing
sure,
with you.
okay, right, fine. I'm glad that they sort of put a cap on it really after episode 2 and went,
Oh yeah.
we've sort of done that bit. Let's
Which
crack on with
I
the
was
more
very
regular type.
grateful for, but it also made me even more annoyed at the initial ones because I was like, oh well, we've just done a half an entire season without them, so we didn't need them there,
Didn't need them in the first place. And this comes on to my next point, which is a positive point, which
Mm,
is the 3 episodes succeeding that
mm.
were far superior.
Is that
The best of the
Boom,
series. So I'm talking about Boom, Dot and
Bub
Bubble,
Bubble
and
and Dot?
73 Yards.
Yeah, yeah, they were
All
good.
3 of those were
Yeah.
really good. They were without a doubt the best episodes of the series, and the 3 of
Mm,
them are genuinely good. But all of them are totally flawed. Of course they are, because a load of them, they all rely on expositional stuff and weird characters and slightly unlikable characters and a fair amount of what the fuckiness. But they are all well put together. They all look great. They all have
mm,
good performances with distinguishable moods. They set a tone really nicely. They've got
mm,
coherent stories which are interesting.
mm-hmm,
And I love that about them completely. I think 73 Yards was probably the most flawed, but it still
mm,
tried something very new, and it
yeah.
deserves nothing but respect for that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Boom tried something new. Stick the Doctor on one spot for the whole
But
episode.
I don't think that is new.
Well,
I don't.
it's not
Literally
new.
having
Okay,
him on
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 one
one
spot is, yeah,
spot.
he
Yeah,
can't
sure.
move. The
But
Doctor can't move.
sure, but we've been in this situation like 73 yards, I get, but it's got that aspect of like turn left,
Yes,
where
yeah.
you've got like the companion is left to kind of figure it out for themselves. They've got to live this life separately to the Doctor,
Mhm.
almost as if they'd never met him, in order to, dictate their path forward, fair dues.
Yeah,
And so it is new, but it felt like they'd not fallen back, that's not the word that I mean, but it felt like they'd returned to this premise and this structure that we know and we enjoy works. The one that I found differed the most was Dot and Bubble,
right.
and I loved that.
Yeah,
Think I liked that the most
yeah, I
because
did
of
as
it.
well. It's this interesting, and I listened to Stephen Moffat and Russell T have this discussion where quite a
Mm,
lot of the time, particularly in Old Who,
mm,
episode 3 was the episode where you fucked the Doctor off for a bit. You just said,
sure.
"This man never shuts up. Let's leave him behind."
Hmm.
What was interesting was that I think all of us up until then had gone, he hasn't done any doctoring yet. What we've seen is him put a drag queen back in a piano by singing a song with Johannes Radebe. What we haven't
God.
seen is, uh, a full force performance of the
I
Doctor
don't
being
know
in
if
charge.
episode 3 is where they piss off,
He's a bit no, no. Well, okay, I mean, it's Old Who in particular, because Stephen Moffat was saying that
Oh,
you need
sure.
an episode just to shut him up, because that's the tricky thing, is
Mm,
giving that, because he could just talk and talk and talk, and you could just write and write and write for all the things the
mm,
Doctor could say, but you need to find some ways of leaving some gaps, right?
mm-hmm,
But what was great about Boom was that it didn't do that. It just went,
mm-hmm.
here's some shooty time, right? But that's what I loved about Dot and Bubble was we were following someone, and this was what was new about it. Not that it
Mm,
was a Doctor Light episode, not
yeah,
that
yeah,
it
yeah.
was about loads of slugs, not that it was based in technology. Which I'll be honest with you, for the first time I watched Dot and Bubble,
Hmm.
I didn't really get on with it.
I remember you saying.
Yeah, and then I watched it again, and then I thought, I see the point of it now.
Yeah,
I get
yeah,
it. Because I spent the whole time going, God, I hate this woman so
yeah.
much. She is beyond, she's not likable. And then you get to the end and you go, oh, and then you rewatch it and you pick up on all the little things. And we've never done a Dr. Light story focusing on someone else where by the end of it, we are not on board with that person anymore.
Mm,
And that was
mhm.
fascinating to watch because normally the doctor comes back in and you go, oh, great, they met the doctor. Cool. What a lovely reunion. But this time you met the
Mm,
doctor and they went, oh, shit, this
yeah.
was not supposed to happen like this. And
But
that was what was great.
but the thing that I like is actually I think you almost are on board with her. Like you start off not, she
Yeah.
dismisses people immediately. She's a bit irritating. She's your classic like, oh, we're taking a bit of a smack at Gen Z here. And then as she gains a little bit more confidence, a little bit more awareness, we start to root for her a bit more to be able to get out of that situation. And then
Mm.
the moment that, oh,
She kills Ricky Sunday.
Ricky Sunday, no, not
No,
Sunday.
Ricky
Ricky,
Saturday.
no, it's not
Is it
something.
Ricky Monday?
Oh, no,
Here we
surely not.
go. Pause for Google
Ricky
break.
December? I don't.
Ricky September, it might be.
Ricky September. I thought it was a month. Ricky September. Right. Sorry, that was such a tangent. Anyway, but
Sorry.
like until the moment where she essentially kills Ricky September,
Yeah.
you're like kind of becoming more on her side. And I really liked this switch. Like I just thought it was new. I thought it was
Mm.
interesting.
Who'd have thought we would be siding with some giant man-eating slugs by the end of it?
Well, I don't think we were.
Yeah. I'm Team Slug all the way every day. Let the racists be devoured. That's what I thought. But then, going back again, watching it the second time through, because I did watch it twice, I picked up on so many things,
Yeah.
so many little lines that feed into that perfectly. And of course, the first time you're watching, you go, there you go, Gen Z criticism. Yeah, get off your phone.
Mm,
Yeah, I know it, granddad. Thanks.
mm,
And then it's like, that was a ruse.
yeah.
And actually, this is about privilege in society, and that,
Yeah.
and you go and you don't pick up on it. But I think, well, I didn't because I'm very white. But
Hmm.
the first time looking at all of her friends list,
Mm,
it's all. I thought it looked ugly for a bit. I thought it was like, oh, what's all this horrible block coloring? It's all so like, oh,
mm,
it's all Disney and shiny. And then the point of it is that actually, it's all this airbrushed, saturated world
mm,
of of high white color, right?
mm-hmm,
You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
Like everything's light and bright because it's
mm-hmm,
all supposed to feed into the whiteness. And then the
mm,
doctor turns up and she's immediately resistant to him.
mm, mm-hmm.
That was great. So that, that worked really well. And then 73 yards, all the gothic stuff, it got worse for me as it went on, but all of the gothic horror type stuff near the beginning and
Mm. Yeah,
um up until joining the political campaign,
sure.
I thought all of that stuff was working really, really well, and I was loving it.
I mean, I just want to look like that if I'm 40, you know?
Yes, yes,
God,
the
when she was like,
aging.
I'm 42, I was like, I don't
No,
think
no,
you
you've
are.
put some glasses on.
You put some
But
glasses on and you put a roller in your hair.
my a gratuitous use of the Cardiff City Stadium. I think this is another thing. They're like, it's Russell T Davies. Where is it? Wales. Are we not going to have it? No, Wales. Right, okay. Like also, watching everything from season one, like even in like it's episode 3, it's the Unquiet Dead, and he's like, oh, was it like it's not 1859, it's 1860 something. So he's like, I don't care.
1869 then, sure.
Um, something we're not. It's something else or something. I don't care. It's not London. I don't care. It's Cardiff, and then she
Yeah.
just stops dead in her
Yeah.
tracks.
And then the
Um,
whole thing with like the Blythe Drug,
Blythe, and then the
yeah,
the rift
the
being central
rift
to
being
everything.
in Cardiff,
And
yeah.
what's great though is that Russell will have gone, can't we make it Swansea? Can we not just make it Swansea? That would be great. But my big problem with 73 yards is not enough Barnard, not
Oh,
enough of the evil sinisterness of Roger Ap Gwilliam. I would have loved to see his character be more evil. I would have loved to
mm,
see that progression from, beloved political candidate to
sure.
man who's going to nuke the earth. But
But we could watch that.
lovely to see Amal Rajan pop up in Doctor Who.
Oh, always.
But yeah, I thought those 3 episodes were great, and I was really glad that they did
Mm,
different stuff. They didn't just go, let's have a story. They went,
yeah.
let's do a cool thing with the story.
Mm,
I know it was only one episode, but I think Moffat wrote really well for Shutigawa.
yeah, sure. I do, yeah, I do hear that. But I also think that like it was in the simplicity of the story. Yes, the story wasn't simple in itself, but actually where it differs from, for example, stuff of like the Jodie Whittaker era, um, is that I feel like when I was watching quite a lot of the Jodie episodes, it went everywhere very fast. You had a problem, and then in that 15 minutes, they were like, "Oh, we'll solve the problem," and then they did, and then they were like, "Oh, well, we've got to. That has to be part of a bigger problem because we've just solved the problem." And so within like a 1 hour episode, you would have like three different problems that they would solve, and I was like, "Oh, but actually, what we really need here is like one issue that
Mhm.
you just kind of fix over the course of an episode."
Every episode was then and then
And
this,
then
and then
and
we're
then
gonna do
this,
this,
and
and
they
we're gonna
went
do
to
this.
like a
Well, hold
different
on, no,
place.
stop. Talk about this. Just
Yeah.
talk about it. Just tell us exactly what you're looking at. Yeah, good.
Talk
No,
about this with
no,
talk about this with a close mid on Jodie, and then but like
Jodie,
but
can you just
yeah.
do a bit more heavy breathing, please? I've not quite done enough of that. I'm on 11, Chris. I'm on 11.
Um, and they'd go to a different place each time, like each problem, right?
Mm,
Whereas what I really liked about a lot of these episodes is which is something I didn't like about the Beatles one as much, is because they did dart to and from places.
yeah.
But I liked this idea of like staying put, not necessarily physically. Like, yes, Shooty literally stayed put in Boom, but like I like this idea of staying in one like a situation in one realm and
Yes.
like moving with that. And I think there's absolutely time for like running around and doing lots of different things and going to lots of different places, fair dues. But I actually find that the most effective episodes are the ones where we stay within one situation and
This is
that
an
carries through.
excellent point
Thank
because
you. It's
I
almost
was
like I work in the industry.
I was thinking of a way to articulate that problem, and the best I came up with is like I love the patience of some of the old episodes. Yes, they dart
Hmm.
around and lots of things happen, but there's a patience to them in which they adopt their environment, they adopt their
Hmm.
world, and then they happen within it. And
Hmm.
that allows for you to be, within the first 10 minutes of
Mm.
most episodes of New Who up to,
Mm.
13, they would establish a place, and within 10 minutes, you'd be accepting you were in the place.
Mm.
What I found, as you were just mentioning there, with a
Mm.
lot of the Chibnall stuff, is it went, here's a place.
Let's
Now there's
move.
another place.
Yeah.
Um, and in that you were saying, yeah, you couldn't, but like there's one episode where the TARDIS materializes outside Anfield, and it's just so that they can meet John Bishop, and then that's it,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
you go, cool. But
Yeah.
the stuff this season, it felt a lot more like here's the world, here's the setting for
Yeah.
this, and let's go in with it. And I thought
Mm.
that was great, but
Yeah.
it still was. This sounds so weird to be saying this, but it was still two events focused
Right.
because I don't know about you, maybe it was just because I'd checked out too early,
Mm.
but I was emotionally moved by maybe two scenes across the season. And
Okay.
actually watching back through anything from 2005 to the end of Capaldi is
Mm.
realizing just how emotional this show is.
Mm.
Um,
Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I watched the End of Time parts 1 and 2.
yeah.
And actually some of the writing of that, especially End of Time part 1, I was like, actually going back with a critical eye, I'm not massively on board with some of this. However, then End of Time Part 2, the emotion, like the acting skills of both David
Mm,
Tennant and John Sim, and then the emotion behind it. Oh my gosh. Like I
that's
still
what I
nearly
mean, though.
cried.
But
Yeah.
that's the thing is it allowed those moments of character to. But this is the thing is no one is holding up 2005 to 2014 as a flawless gold standard.
Oh no.
You look at the end of time. Why? I know that the master's using up however much energy, but why can he now shoot electricity
Yeah,
beams from his
sure. Yeah,
hands and
yeah, yeah,
fly
yeah.
into the air? That makes
Yeah, yeah.
no sense. That's so stupid.
Absolutely.
Um, but we like John Sim, and
Hmm.
we are given enough time for John Sim to interact with David Tennant. And
Mhm.
like, this is the thing, is imagine if they tried now to make a villain the Prime Minister of the UK. I mean, they did it in 73
Mm,
Yards. And what did we get out of it? He wants to nuke places.
mm,
And that was it. In Last of the Time Lords,
mm.
or Sound of Drums, whichever way
Sound
around.
of drums.
Sound of Drums. In that one, he became Prime Minister, and the first thing he did when we
Hmm.
saw him as Prime Minister was gas his cabinet.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that is mental. But it went
yeah.
straight from that into a conversation with the doctor over the phone.
Mm,
And it set everything was moved along by a
mhm,
character dynamic. Everything was moved along by Martha trying to get his attention somehow, trying to
mm,
feel back what she felt for him. And then
mhm,
that arc was realizing that's a
mm.
waste of my time and I've got better things to do. And that's one of the most I hate it when people diss the end of season 3, because that is one of the most satisfying endings for a character,
I agree.
is her going, you know what? This is a waste of my, and that's really mature
Yeah,
writing, because
yeah.
Russell so easily could have gone, "Just give him another woman to be infatuated with."
Mm.
It's that old Andy Parsons joke, which is like, I'm the doctor, I'm 906 years old, and this is my assistant, who's 27. But
If that,
yeah,
Rose was
exactly.
supposed to be 19.
19, yeah. But everything was moved everything in season 4 is
Mm,
totally moved along by Donna calming the doctor down,
mm,
making him a more emotionally mature character, and
mhm,
becoming an equal to him, not just someone who is doubting themselves.
mm,
And then everything with Amy and Rory and the Doctor was about them sticking together as a three, and about Amy having to choose, but actually
mm,
ultimately always going back to Rory and all this kind of stuff. And it
mm.
always moved somewhere because of the characters in it.
Yeah.
What is different to that is going, right, character work, yeah, difficult, because this alien spaceship full of babies is about to fart itself free of a monster. So, here we go. 30 seconds. It's snowing now. Cool, good, yeah, moving on. So, it's time to, and it was like every episode, it just went, he's still here. It's snowing.
You know what? I get you, but I don't agree.
Okay.
I think that the focus of the previous seasons had been how the companion had influenced the doctor. So
Okay.
you have that whole thing of like, it came out in basically love with Rose, like the doctor learned to love. So, and then in Martha, it was that, like you say, that unrequited, like, kind of yearning, and then that indifference, and we see that actually he's a bit of a prick. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
in the Shakespeare Code,
Shakespeare Code.
he's literally like lying in a bed and he's like, come on. And he knows she fancies him. And then he's like, oh, what's wrong? And he's like face to face with her and he's like, Rose would know. And she's like, oh, good for
What
fucking
a
Rose.
dick.
What a dick. Like, who gets that close to somebody? Like, anyway, and then in like with Donna, it's that whole best friendship and her stopping him from going too far,
Mm.
and being that kind of like voice of reason, and that empathetic voice in that moment. And then in Amy, it's that whole like, oh, this imaginary friend come to life. What could you do with this imagination? And this choice that she has to make, that actually the doctor is this imaginary character that you can't ever settle with. That's what they're getting from him. Clara, it's that whole idea of, oh, how much can you flirt with a person? How much can you flirt with a person before it's like, oh, everyone's like, oh, hang on. And it's that whole
Okay, I
bringing that
think I think
aspect.
Clara's slightly more than that, but I
No.
completely take your
Sure,
point.
sure, sure. But like, as in, she obviously brings more to the doctor and all this kind of stuff, but it's about
Mm,
like how they influence him. Whereas I feel like the relationship between this current doctor and Ruby Sunday, it was sort of already imagined from day dot. It was already how it was going to be for the rest of the time from day dot. And there was a really nice moment in 73 Yards
mhm.
when she was like asking after her friend. She was asking where he'd gone. And she was like, oh, have you seen him? Like, six, whatever, in a coat, black guy with a beanie. Like, and immediately, like, you're like, oh, yeah, that's just how you describe your best friend. But at no point had I seen that like real like link between them as a best friendship before that, or I hadn't seen that grow. And I'd seen him be intrigued by her, but I haven't seen her like influence him in any way. To me, with Ruby Sunday, there was less of that like, and I don't like this word, but I am going to use it, like that spunk. No, I mean like the silence was horrific there. I mean like
It's a
the
family show, Verity.
it's absolutely not the bite back of like that the companion naturally has that kind of spark. And I think that she was somebody that you wanted to she was somebody that I felt sympathetic for, but I didn't feel like the need to rally behind her.
Okay. Well, this
Does that make
culminates.
sense?
Yes, it does. But this culminates in the next topic I wanted to talk about, and that's very much
Okay.
part of it, which is the finale.
Okay.
And I mean, across the two parters here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but 10 minutes of it was good.
Which 10 minutes?
The last 10 minutes of the first part was the first time,
Yes, I
it's
agree.
the first time since watching Peter Capaldi that I have felt dread from a Doctor Who episode.
Mm-hmm.
I got genuinely excited.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean about Russell T. How can you do all of that work and you know how can you make me emotionally forgive you for some of the most turgid shit of the first half an hour of that episode by making the last 10 minutes of it feel
Brilliant. Yeah.
alive and and
Mm-hmm.
and and petrifying
Mm-hmm.
and intriguing? How can you do that and then the very next episode spend 10 minutes on a spoon? On a spoon, which had no, what the, oh,
That's not
the
the first time that
TARDIS.
Doctor Who spent 10 minutes on a spoon.
I know I did it in Robot of
I
Sherwood
was
and
going
all
to
that
say
kind of
Robot
stuff.
Sherwood is a
Yeah,
spoon.
but it was funny then. It wasn't the
Yeah.
end of the world then.
No, that's true.
It was a joke then.
Yeah.
What the TARDIS needs some metal. This crying woman that's clearly got some sort of
Oh,
unresolved
let's go to Claire from
P-
Fleabag and see what she
PTSD.
has to
Yeah,
offer.
yeah, yeah. Do you reckon she's got a spoon? Oh, what luck! She's got a spoon. Oh, good. Um, where you know you can break down there's ridiculousness in all of Doctor Who. You can break
Sure.
down every plot from every episode and go, what the hell's happening here?
Yeah.
How does this get to this? And how does he
Sure.
do this? This is all ridiculous. Of course you can do that with all of it, but you'd very rarely be left with question marks over character depth or performance quality or mechanical questions or philosophical questions or quality-based questions, which you get here big time. Everyone hated when Chibnall wrote The Timeless Child. And
Yeah, I hate
who
that.
wrote the I hated that. It was stupid, right?
Yeah.
And do you know what else is stupid? Having a big dog cling to the TARDIS for however many
Yeah,
years.
that I didn't like. I didn't like the idea that I don't like this whole thing of like we're changing the law of Doctor Who as we
Mm,
go on, or we're
mm.
changing so something, I mean, the thing that begins this whole season is something that I didn't like. And I feel like it was maybe it is that thing of like, you know, what you were saying about someone needs to like just tell Russell, like, oh, maybe no, maybe we stop there.
Yeah.
Is the bi generation.
Right.
I think that the whole concept of Doctor Who is that you say goodbye to one man because he becomes another man. It's this
Mm.
whole idea of like reinvention and changing anew. And I didn't like this idea of like, oh, but we can become two people. One of them can go and happily retire. Like, what's the point of having the Doctor go and happily retire? Do you know what I
I
mean?
do, I do, I do.
Like
And
I do
normally,
think that the whole point of regeneration is it's a rejuvenation, it's a recreation of something. You're
yeah,
starting from scratch with a person and you need
yeah,
to get
yeah.
to know them and you need to it's a forceful thing because for example like David Tennant into Matt Smith, that was that whole like horrible moment of like I don't want to go, and then all of a sudden like Matt Smith's there and you're like, oh, and now we're in fire. And
It's the same with
you
Matt Smith into Capaldi. That one
yeah, it's the
sneeze and then he's
sneeze, and
gone.
then all
Yeah,
of a
it was.
sudden he's Capaldi. Yeah, but you have to lose one in order to get on board with the other. And I fear that people won't have got on board with Shooty as much because they're like, oh well, David's still kicking about, and
Mm,
I
I
don't know if that's true or not, but
I'd
that's my.
normally agree, but
Hmm.
what's weird is I think this is the only point in all of Doctor Who where anyone would have been able to get away with it.
Fair.
I, but, I'm honest with you,
I
I
disagree,
looked at
but
it. I
sure.
looked at it, and sure, I looked at it
Hmm.
and I went, that's a really nice ending. And then I rationalized it and went, we've already seen Tennant die once.
Yeah.
It was going to be immensely difficult to do it again.
Sure.
I get your point though, of if this is one, we can't do this again. We cannot do
Yeah.
this again. But
Because all of a sudden, then there's going to be an entire fucking generation
yeah,
of doctors
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
is a race of their own. You can do little things, like for example, in final Donna episode after Turn
Journey's End.
Journey's End, that whole thing of like David regenerating and then, you know, regenerating back into himself, like using the hand, that kind of thing.
Let's fuck with people for a week. Haha, he's
That's like, yeah.
regenerating.
And I'm like, okay, well, do you know what? But we didn't change the whole history of Doctor Who to do
Mm,
that. He was like, look, I did a sneaky trick. Oh, oh, oh.
mhm.
And we could get behind that. Whereas the Timeless Child of like changing the entire premise of the whole world
Yeah.
up until then, that's something I can't get behind. And so that's why I didn't like this idea of Sutek, because
Okay.
I just feel like it changed what came before.
Sure. But this is where I think we have to be careful, because I think my problem with that is not that specific thing.
Right.
I agree with you that it's stupid, but that's not my problem. My problem isn't that it rewrote Doctor Who, because I think that falls into potentially falls into the it's not what it was before, and I don't like
Mm,
change.
mm,
My problem with it is that it's stupid. Um, I can I can accept that Sutek had been infecting the TARDIS for a long time. I can accept that he had been taking the TARDIS to specific locations to try and mess with the Doctor and try and, you know, ruin his life or whatever. I can totally get on board with that. But the idea of him genuinely being clinging to the TARDIS is stupid. And then that has the follow-on effect of affecting stuff. I think that having a timeless child, I can accept the fact that the Doctor has previous existence that we don't know about. And I think that was a great way of giving Jodie Whittaker, even if the story is fundamentally rubbish as the
mm,
whole episode is an arc. The Doctor having an unknown life is something that I think would have a massive impact story-wise and
mm,
character-wise, but the way they did it was stupid. And I
mm,
think what is clear to me going on longer and longer is that Stephen Moffat and Peter Capaldi deserve an enormous amount of credit for keeping people interested up until the end of Capaldi's run, by doing those self-contained stories in those seasons, and that's all they were, because I think there's a mythology to the Time War,
mm,
which was utterly compelling. And the whole time leading up to the 50th, there was this lingering question of how can this
mm,
lovely character, this incredible person who's always abhors violence, never does anything
mm,
like that, as Stephen Moffat says, you know, he commits genocide off screen.
mm-hmm,
And we go, how the hell is this person capable of doing that? You get to the
mm-hmm.
50th, and then you get, you know, the name of the
I
Doctor. You
do
get
think the
the end
50th was
Smith.
exceptional.
It was just that's a
Stunning.
absolute behemoth of a thing
Yeah,
to
yeah,
try
yeah.
and corrupt, but he did it.
Yeah.
And then you get to Capaldi, and the tone of the tonal change is he's a different person now. He's an older man. He's an angrier man. And that's the great thing about Clara, and that actually my lasting impression of Clara is not the fact that she flirts with everyone, but she does. But it's more the fact that
She makes him kinder.
he makes him kind of, but she
Yeah.
has to adjust more than ever from one person to the next. Because
Mm,
let's think about Rose, okay?
yeah.
Um, Chris Eccleston to David Tennant. By the end of Eccleston's, that's not a huge leap.
No, 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 no.
But Smith to Capaldi is
Yeah. Massive.
enormous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And that's why I just adore in Deep Breath
I love Deep
when
Breath.
they land back in Glasgow and she gets the phone call from 11.
Mm.
That was so well judged, because that's not only
I sent you a
Clara.
meme about that the other day.
Yeah, he did. It's
It
we're
was
not
really
going to
funny.
repeat it, but it was phenomenal. But that's not just Clara being told about what to do with the new Doctor.
Oh yeah,
That
it's all
is
of us.
us as an audience going,
Mm,
stick with this,
mm,
because this guy is really good.
mm,
And then this guy was really good.
mhm.
And then it was character that Moffat used to keep everyone interested. It was Missy, who was just this astonishing reinvention of the
Michelle
Master.
Gomez, I do
Michelle
think is
Gomez is brilliant, but
one of
that's
the best reincarnations of the Master.
perfect. But
Hmm.
that comes from Moffat understanding that there was a dynamic change, so there needed to be a counterpart
Hmm.
to that dynamic change,
Yeah.
and it was like they switched from one to the other. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
Master went from angry, bitter character,
Mm.
and then the Doctor became angry, bitter, and Master became this brilliantly
Mary
freeing
Poppins on
Mary
crack.
Poppins on crack. Exactly
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And that was wonderful. And then you get to Jodie Whittaker, and
Mhm.
Chibnall decides, right, character's difficult, so let's have loads of them.
Yeah.
It's really strange to me
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the first series of Jodie Whittaker, the first two series of Jodie Whittaker, she has three people traveling with her in the TARDIS.
Mm-hmm.
She has Mandip Gill, she has Bradley
Mm-hmm.
Walsh, and she has Tosin Cole.
Mm.
And that problem with that is,
I don't get attached to any of them.
yeah, not enough. I mean,
Yeah.
there's fun moments between them. Don't get me
Mm.
wrong. I'm not saying that Chibnall's run is completely
No, no,
just
no,
a
no, no, no.
total write-off, because there are great moments of character in that. Uh, it's a stupid thing, and it's not a very memorable thing. It's not a tear-jerking overarching thing, but it's a sweet story to have that Ryan learns to ride a bike because of Graham thing.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
a
sure.
nice story,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But what I failed to get with this season was, outside of wondering what actually happened to Ruby on the day where she was left at the church.
Mm.
Um, what's why are they just friends? Why are they just best friends immediately?
Mm.
Why was
Yeah.
it? I'll tell you why. Because they shared a musical number together in episode 1,
So,
and
yeah.
They met Davina McCall, so now they're friends. And it was this whole thing of, I'm not invested enough yet, and that's the problem with the finale.
Mm.
Is people spend ages in the first episode, uh, emotional
Mm-hmm.
and saying supposedly emotional things, and
Mm-hmm.
they all feel flat as fuck to me.
Sure.
Every single one of them, like her mum telling her that she's like, like when Ruby starts crying about her mother, her real mother in the cloak,
Mm.
that moment should be so much more emotional than it is. But I
Mm.
look at her and I think, uh, genuinely, I don't get the impression that you give enough of a shit for the rest of this series as to who this woman actually is. I thought the point of this series was that your adoptive mother is your mother as far as you're
Is better
concerned,
than
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that is all that matters. Now, here's another thing as well. People getting angry with the twist that Ruby's mother's just a normal woman. It's not anyone, it's not the trickster, it's not
Oh no, I
it's
agree
not
with that.
herself.
I
I
think
think
it should be a normal
that's
woman.
brilliant. That's
Mm-hmm.
perfect. No qualms at
Mm-hmm.
all,
Yeah.
right? But I
But
don't care. And
right.
the reason I don't care is because no one else has cared.
Mm.
And also, it's being explained to me in such a stupid way. Sorry, and this is so baffling. She is called Ruby because on an occasion when, as far as her mother was concerned, nobody was there, she put the baby down, walked off, turned around, and pointed at a sign on a street lamp.
Yep. Yep.
That's got nothing to do with anything. And also, who does that? Who turns around and points at someone like, I
What are
mean,
you
it's
talking about? Every time when I'm walking down the road, I turn around and I'm like, W6. That's what I'll name my child.
so there's loads of tourists going, look, Oxford Street to the big
Literally.
point.
I'm like, any one.
Yes.
That's me. Like,
Um, the whole emotional impact of the entire series was based around an intrigue, not an emotion.
okay.
Everyone's intrigue was pricked as to, how can it be snowing?
Mm.
Is there something more to Ruby that we don't know? We'd love to find out what that is. That would be a cool thing to find out. None of
Okay.
it was, this is so sad, Ruby doesn't know who her mother is. Because what the one bit of character that I think really stood out was Ruby's mum, was absolutely Ruby's mum, and their relationship I believed in from minute one. I always felt the love there. I never felt like anything was missing from it. So none of us felt really
That she was
like,
missing something.
yeah, there was no gap
Mm.
to fill there.
Sure.
And
But
I
I
would
think
have
that's the
much.
intention. I get you, and I agree. But I do think that was the intention behind it, was that you can have this person that loves you, and then actually you can still seek something else.
Yeah.
The minor qualm that I had with things is that I feel like we got to know Ruby personally. I feel like in that first episode, it was about getting to know Ruby, the goblins in the
Yes.
sky, and all that.
Yep.
It was about getting to know Ruby, and I do feel like I did that. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, this is your vibe. These are your friends. This is your mum. This is who you want to be your mum. This is Davina McCall. Like, okay, cool, great, welcome. But I felt like every other Doctor apart from Chris Eccleston, who we've been introduced to with their regeneration. So we were introduced to Shruti with his regeneration.
Yep.
I think the first episode of their season has been about getting to know them as a person. It's about who am I? What kind of doctor am I going to be? We had that with David Tennant in the Sycorax. You know,
I don't
I
know.
don't know. You know, the quoting the Lion King. You know, figuring out what kind of man he was. And Matt Smith, The 11th Hour, is the perfect example of like, oh, the ADHD is trying to figure out where it lies and where's the ADHD working. And it's like that's the perfect example of that. And then the whole Capaldi, the first episode of that was like obviously him figuring out why he's got this face and why he's this man, but actually us figuring out through Clara and the team of, you know, Strax and Vasta and everyone of oh, how are we reacting to him? How do we what do we think this man is? How can
Yeah.
we approach that? And then Jodie again, it was like, oh, I think I'm this person. I think you're going to be my friend. And actually, I think I want you to be my friend. And all of that time we moved with the doctor following their discovery of who they are. And I don't feel like I got full sight into Shooty's doctor becoming who they are,
Mm.
and deciding on the person that they be. I got to see him doing some dancing in a stunning skirt in a bar, and I
Oh,
got to
yes. It
see,
was a kilt, wasn't it? Because he's
yeah, it
Scottish.
was a beautiful yellow kilt, and I was like, I am here for this.
Mm.
But I got to see some brilliant dancing. I got to see him catch a gin with one hand. Excellent. But what does that tell me about who you are?
Yeah.
And I felt like he did brilliant things with a lot of the material that he was given. So, for example, that whole moment in Bubble and Dot when we watch a man try to save people that shouldn't be saved and yet
Mm.
get rejected from it anyway. That was a beautiful moment. That was a heart-pouring moment. But I don't feel like in the first episode or two, I got to figure out who the doctor was with the doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's why I like Boom.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
it's the first Doctor heavy. Here he is. This is what he's about. This is what he does.
Mm,
What I didn't anticipate, and I was this is part of my point linking in with the actual finale thing. What I
mm,
didn't anticipate, right? What I loved about, I mean, Boom, it was an incredibly emotional performance from him, as in
mm.
his watery eyes, shaky voice, but firm in the moments where it needed to be. It was a full tour de force in one episode, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, the bloke is inches away from imminent explosion.
Mm.
I get all of this. What I didn't anticipate was that to then be diluted by almost exactly the same thing happening in every single episode from that point onwards.
Oh, what? The single tear running down his cheek.
Yeah, the and
I'm
this is
very
a
impressed that Shooty can do that, but
this is
I think
oh,
I think it
it's
dilutes it the more you do it.
I'm very impressed in Babylon that Margot Robbie can cry as many times as she does. I mean, I know
Mm.
it's part of the thing for the character, but I'm still
Yeah.
very impressed by it. I still think the film is shit, but I'm still very impressed by that. And I've said this
Yeah.
before. I said, I think I remember which I think it was in the Challengers podcast I was talking about it, but Ncuti Gatwa is obviously an excellent actor, a great performance.
And like
Uh,
with Challenger, all he needed was some EDM in the background.
Yes, yes, we've been missing Trent Reznor going. Um, but is it just his shtick that this version of the Doctor is the one that throws tantrums and cries?
I don't think he
Is
does
it
throw
is it the
tantrums.
most emotionally unstable version of the Doctor? And this is the key point that I
Oh, I
think
don't think
of.
he's the most emotionally unstable version of the Doctor.
Ah.
And the other vowels are.
A-I-O-U, Geordie. If if this is his version, then if that's who he is as the Doctor,
Mm,
then Boom actually is better than I think because that's showing us that this is this version of the Doctor,
mm,
right? But the Doctor up until now has experienced such loss and regular hardship and heartbreak on so many occasions, and barely ever has he let the tears flow or anything like that. Now, I may
There's nothing wrong with a man
I
being in tune with his
well, this was
emotions.
saying I was understanding if this is the Doctor that tells people that it's okay to be in tune with your emotions, but it's in a really frustrating way. It's in a young man crying way. It's in a someone who it feels like every death is the first death that they've experienced, and
Sure.
obviously that it just gives emotional weight, I suppose, but if you think about it, to the deaths that happen on screen. But
I know what you
we're
mean.
missing a Wilf moment because we're not going to get that because we've had it on so many different occasions.
No, do you know what? I know what you mean, but I am going to disagree because I do think it is a case of like, oh, how much can we cry? It's not the crying that I have an issue with; it's the moments surrounding it. I feel like in previous episodes, you've got those moments where David Tennant's doctor is faced with the realities of what he's done and who his doctor is. You've got that part, um, at when he's shown all of these people that have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sacrificed themselves over time, and that's a moving moment for him, and yet the pace of the show doesn't change for that moment, if that makes
Mm,
sense. It's still this idea of, oh, he's got to come to terms with this in the fastest pace while everything's going wrong, and this has got to be something he faces while that happens. Whereas I feel like while we watch it in this season, it's something that we pause for and we focus on. It's not something that happens with the
yeah,
movement of the story. It's something that we pause to give
yeah.
a moment to.
It is.
And
It is.
while I think that actually, I'm all for giving a moment for an actor to do some brilliant acting, I also think that when you draw too much attention to that on a regular basis, it takes it away from the monumental aspect of that moment itself. And so when it's been done previously, like David Tennant actually cries low-key quite a bit in Doctor Who, or he gets really kind of like very visibly upset. Matt Smith does that it kind of comes out in anger and frustration within the 11th Doctor. And then within Capaldi, it comes out in this kind of somber shutdown that
Mm.
he doesn't know how to cope with. And actually, those different demonstrations of that very extreme emotion come out very regularly, but it's that we don't give an ample amount of time to see that happen and to follow it and to watch a similar thing happen regularly. It has to happen within the movement of the story. And that's where I feel like these ones differ. And where before I feel like we
Everyone
would have.
stop.
Yeah.
Shooty is acting.
Yeah, exactly.
But an interesting point, on that, they made the Doctor have a gay love interest, and everyone went, "Yeah, cool,"
Yeah. I mean, I didn't
which is nice.
I didn't think that was weird in itself in terms of out of place.
No.
By weird is what I mean there. Like I think that they've done that before. They've done like, the Doctor have like a random romance with, for example, Kylie Minogue, or
Mm.
when
But,
Matt
well,
Smith
okay.
and the
But,
TARDIS Idris had that random
yes.
flirtation,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
this kind of stuff. I really enjoyed it because I felt like it was the first time that the Doctor initiated that. That's the first time that
Right. Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Doctor was like you've traveled whatever it is, like 2,000 years of time and space at this
Mm.
point, and there's got to be a couple of moments where you're like, oh, I would.
Sod it. Yeah, I would. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. I totally
So,
get that. I totally agree. But what is interesting though is when you're mentioning Astrid and Idris as those
mm,
examples. I know which one of those I prefer. Um, and it's Idris in a heartbeat
right.
because the devastating thing about her wasn't necessarily that the Doctor was so in love with that woman. It was what
Mm,
she represented, which
mm,
was a companion that had actually given back to him for the entire time that he had been traveling.
mm,
I think whilst it was sad to lose Astrid and she was very sacrificing, oh, that's a shame,
mm,
but I was never close to tears about it. I am close to tears about Saran Jones
mm,
fading away. I am close, and that line of "I just wanted to say hello." I think that's so much more impactful. But I think the
mm.
interesting case study to use on a one-off basis like this is Madame de Pompadour.
Yeah, sure.
And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what I love so much about the end of that episode is the excitement, and we sort of got a little bit of it in Rogue, was the
Hmm.
excitement build up of going, this could happen, this could totally happen.
Hmm.
We've solved it, this is going to happen. And then he comes
Hmm.
back into the room and the time has slipped again and
Mm,
she's gone.
mm,
And he doesn't break down in tears. He has to have a long period where he just doesn't speak because
mm,
it's that great, and this is what was so great, I think, about 9, 10, and 11 occasionally, was that moment of them going, I've let myself enjoy things too much. I've
Mm.
let this go on a bit too far, and I should be more realistic about things. I thought that 15 was sad because he wasn't going to have this love relationship with the Jonathan Groff character. I didn't think he was sad because he realized that that's something that's not massively open to him as a concept.
They're trying to not glorify, but bring to attention a male vulnerability. And I don't
Yes.
have a problem with that.
No, I have no problem with it either. I just think it'll devalue itself if it happens all the time. Because
Mm.
regardless of who the Doctor is, whether it's Jodie, Peter, Matt, David,
Hmm.
whoever it is, there's always been a spiritual resilience about them. They've
Sure.
always been someone who knows that they will outlive most of the people that they know, and they will have to keep going. And what frustrates me is a version of the Doctor that's somehow forgotten that, and I don't, I don't mean that every Doctor has to be emotionally the same. I could totally get if this is an emotional Doctor and it's an outwardly emotional Doctor, and that's how this Doctor. I think that's a good thing,
Mm.
on the whole. I just don't want it to be in moments when I don't believe it. And again, like I would have been so much more sold on the Doctor and Jonathan. I keep calling him Jonathan Groff because I don't actually know his character name.
Rogue.
Rogue. Oh, he was Rogue, wasn't
He
he?
was
Yes,
Rogue.
he was Rogue.
Mm.
Yes, I would have been much more sold on the Doctor and Rogue if the the circumstances surrounding that hadn't been presented to me in such a stupid way. I don't mean the whole plot of the story. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't love that episode because I have zero care at all for Bridgerton. But
Yeah.
so immediately when people go getting excited about look at all the costuming period and stuff, like, yeah,
Mm.
we've done costuming period stuff. It didn't have to be Bridgerton. I don't like Bridgerton.
Mm.
But I was like, okay, people like it. Cool, whatever,
Mm.
fine. It was the reason he had to say goodbye was because he quickly swapped places with them.
Oh yeah, no, I don't agree. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
It's beats like that, right? River Song, when
Hmm.
she dies in the library,
Mm.
spoiler, when she dies in the library,
Spoiler.
we could anyone could go. So what? She puts those wires together at the last second of the countdown, and apparently that'll be fine. What? That doesn't make any sense. Sure, it doesn't, but it makes some sense, and also that is the thing that's happening, but it's not what's happening.
What?
The character is what is important in that
Right.
moment.
Okay.
We didn't. I wanted more time to get to know Rogue. To
I just felt it got very intense
personally,
very fast, and I was like,
it did,
oh,
it
okay.
did, yeah. But again, that comes back to what you were saying about, like, the Doctor very rarely goes, "Let's just go for this," and I totally
Mm.
get him just going, "Yeah, let's just go for this,"
Mm.
but it it presents to me the problem of the whole series, which is that the things are important and not the people, and that really bugs me because
Mm.
in any stupidity that Doctor Who had in the early iterations of New Who, quite a lot of the time that stupidness and that ridiculousness was outdone by the characters. Did you really think that they would have taken the time out of any of these episodes to have the Doctor and another character, in this case Wilf, sit on a powerless space station and have a 3.5, 4 minute conversation
Mm.
in which the upshot of it was that you just watched them get closer together and find stuff out about each other? Nothing happens in that moment in End of Time Part 2 when that conversation about "I'd be proud if you were my dad."
Mm.
No event happens. It is just them talking. In Part 1, no
Yeah.
event happens when they're apart from seeing Donna, but that's part of the conversation of these characters. Things can happen, of course. That's the point of Doctor Who's mad shit goes on. But the only reason anyone has ever cared about any of it is because of the people involved in it. And I
Mm.
am missing that attachment to these characters. When Ruby left right at the
Mm.
end, I just didn't care.
Hmm.
Number one, I think partly because the whole thing about we know everything so far in advance now of it happening that I know that she's going to be
She's
in
coming
season,
back. Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't care. And her saying "I love you" to the Doctor and then him not saying it back. What
We've done that.
number one, we've done that, but number two, all the evidence pointed that you did love her, mate. I know you're trying not to hurt yourself, but if you're the emotionally open Doctor, hurt yourself.
Mm.
If you're the emotionally open Doctor, then your bad experience with Rogue wouldn't kill your experience with Ruby.
It felt like it was trying to do that thing that that Clara and 12 did when it was like
Yes.
never trust a hug because you can't see the other person's face.
Mm.
It felt like they were trying to do that, but they hadn't had that relationship throughout. So they couldn't do that. Like they couldn't do that whole aspect of like, oh, I'm hiding an emotion from you because we haven't done the hiding emotions thing.
Yeah.
But I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. I will put the caveat on it that
Sure.
I do think that sometimes within these episodes we have got to know characters, but what I really wanted was a through line of understanding these characters. And you said something really interesting a long time ago, and you've said nothing interesting since.
And it was, I was going to say, it was so noteworthy that you've remembered it all these years.
You once said that one of the reasons I don't. Hey, and if you want to end it here, you can end it here because there's such a fucking great quote. But you once said that the reason I think we all got so attached to David Tennant is that A, we felt like we were going through everything with him. We felt like we witnessed and we felt every emotion that he was feeling. But maybe that's because he starts his sort of reign as Doctor Who.
Oh, yes, I know
And
what
he
you're going to
says,
say.
I'm 903.
Yeah.
And then by the end, he says, I'm 906 or I'm
I
909.
I think that I may be right in saying that his Doctor is 5 or 6 years of his
Right,
life.
exactly. And so, but so the volume of the adventures in inverted commas that we see with the Doctor, in terms of if you're to look at how concentrated that is, that's quite a lot of the Doctor in this particular span of his life that we see. Whereas you think about someone like you think about Matt Smith's Doctor, and he goes from being 908 or 9 to 2000 and
Yeah, he's
something.
old.
And
Yeah.
so over the course of what's probably about 3 series, where one person in the course of 4 series aged 5 or 6 years, the next person aged, 1,000 years, and that makes us feel like we've lost out on time viewing that Doctor.
Mm.
And I think this season, I feel like I haven't followed the Doctor in a through line of his adventures or their adventures. I feel like I've watched snippets happen. However, with somebody like Eccleston or with someone like Tennant, I did feel like I was, cool. So we've gone from here and now you're taking us here. And it felt like the series as a whole, I watched the Doctor travel through that.
Mm.
Whereas this season, I haven't felt like I've watched the Doctor travel through it. I felt like I have jumped on at particular tube stops and I've ridden with you for a change and I've got off and you've carried on and I've met you somewhere else. That's
Mhm.
what I feel like.
That's a good idea. I like that. So, okay, I'm going to stop complaining now, and we're going to turn to
Oh my God, it's still going. Okay.
we're going to turn to the last sort of headlines
Jesus, you're gonna
on.
have to edit this.
It's fine. I'm going to have to turn to the final headlines on how to fix Doctor Who,
Okay.
and I'm going to say a few things. Number one, there needs to be an aggregate standard of acting. Because
Please explain yourself.
some people in this series were really good, and some people were really subpar.
Name names, sir. Name names. Call
Name
out.
names. I don't quite know how it's possible, and I don't know if you're going to agree with this, but I
Mm.
think I stand by this.
Mm.
Kate Lethbridge Stewart has gotten worse at acting over the course of being in Doctor Who, and I don't really understand that because when she came in initially,
Mm.
she was
I was all aboard.
fantastic. She was
Mm.
so great, and I think maybe it's to do with the lines that she's been given. But we also need to stop bringing back previous Doctor Who companions that
We
can't act.
not bringing back the companion.
Did you watch I think it's the last episode of Jodie Whittaker where they bring back Ace and Tegan, and
Yeah,
the
that was
pair of it
so
is an
bad.
absolute
That
clown
was
show.
so shit.
Yeah, I mean it really is. And they were, do you know what was? Oh, what should we? Do you remember the time where they had the sixth Doctor and everyone stopped watching? Should we repeat that again? No, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think, and this may be my overarching point, is Doctor Who needs to take itself seriously. And that sounds stupid because of how stupid a show it is.
Yeah.
But at the end of midnight, the Doctor goes, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's a 45-second scene, walks back into the Leisure Palace, has a hug with Donna, and Murray Gold's brilliant score is playing over the top of it. And he is rocked by what he's seen. He is cold, he is scared, and then Donna does once, she says two words. She repeats molto bene back at him, and he shits a brick. And stuff like that.
Physically on screen, right there.
Right there. She shut
Into the
herself right there.
pool.
She shut herself. There's another reason they've got to move the Leisure Palace is because, oh, he's shat on the
Oh, the
floor.
Doctor shot himself.
That's why you can't have a musical number. Because
The score has too much weight anyway.
the
Yeah.
Dark Knight, if it didn't take
Oh,
itself,
don't fuck on about Batman.
listen. If the Dark Knight wasn't earnest and didn't believe in what it was
The
doing,
Dark Knight had a musical number.
exactly. Well, this is what I mean. If it didn't take itself seriously, if
I am
if
the Batman.
I was going to say, if Heath Ledger started going, why so serious? Then everyone would be like, oh, Jesus Christ. If your show believes in what it's doing and continues that theme, people will forgive its misdemeanors.
Sure.
And the early RTD stuff is full of misdemeanors. I've read loads of stuff where people revisit things and go, this isn't very good, this isn't very good. And they go, actually, you're correct. You're completely correct. Love and Monsters is a really weird episode. And at the end of it, a man gets a blowjob off a slab. And,
yeah.
you know, one of what I
A
think...
man gets a blood off of a slab with the face of Moaning
The
Myrtle.
face of Moaning Myrtle. 50 points if it goes in her head. Right. Sorry.
Oh, that's the most horrific thing you ever.
Goodbye, career.
God.
I'm really gonna have to run this by our agent now.
You're gonna have to run this by my agent so badly.
But a point anyway. But I was making a point. You know, I think Paul Cornell is a genius, and when he writes things like Human Nature and The Family of Blood, I think that two-parter is. And when, that is a gold standard. That is an utter gold standard.
That's
and yet, thematically, it wouldn't happen now. And the reason it wouldn't happen now is, and I've read people complain, and I don't like this complaint because I think it devalues the episode. I think people are complaining about a stupid thing which didn't have consequences. But Joan Redfern is openly racist as a character.
Yeah.
And then the Doctor invites her into the TARDIS. And it's the Doctor that does it. It's not John Smith. It's the Doctor that does it. And loads of people have kicked up a fuss and gone, why on earth would he do that? Like, what a terrible bit of writing. And I go, no, it isn't a terrible bit of writing, because we could clearly see that she was someone who'd be able to learn and adapt. And she was of her time. She was from 1920s England. What the hell did you expect, you morons? But that wouldn't be a conundrum now. We've had the racists episodes, and the racists weren't able to learn and flip round, and that was set in the future. You know, that was set now or whatever.
But if you think about fucking Ricky October or whatever he's called,
Ricky September,
Ricky September,
Jeremy January,
never gonna say no. So
this is my friend Brian February.
So but when you think about him, like, absolutely, yeah, I hear you, but then you have like the good one, you know, you have like the good, in inverted commas, you know, the good one. And he's like, I put down the screen and I read, and we're like, okay, what a fucking
the point is
nerd.
the point is why people liked him is that we watched him. We just watched him go, yeah, this is all stupid. Why are people being racist? Right? We watched him.
I don't know if we did watch him do
no,
that.
No. We never saw him be the same as her. We always saw him be unplugged and be on the side of the good.
Yeah, unplugged.
He was always unplugged.
But the whole point of that world was that it was a world of white supremacy.
Yeah. But he became aware of that, and that's why he unplugged. He separated himself from that dot and that bubble of full of white people to go, do you know what? I'm going to read some books. I'm going to become an independent person. And he had spoken to the Doctor and didn't bat an eyelid. And he was going to go and speak to him, and he was going to go and travel with him or whatever. He was going to go and thank him. But nobody else was. But what the point I'm getting at is all of the flaws like that, which people might complain about, would be undone by the show consistently taking itself seriously and not having loads of overly animated babies complain about a monster made of human mucus which is farted out of existence.
That I hated that. I
It's
also thought
so bad.
there was
But I think tone to judge is so important. But it's not like all of Old Who had the same tone. There's Waters of Mars and there's Unicorn and the Wasp,
yeah.
which are a year apart,
Hmm.
tonally so completely different.
Hmm.
And Unicorn and the Wasp is ridiculous, over the top, camp fun, but it's
Hmm.
not completely. It's not uninvestable.
Mm.
And too much of this was uninvestable. It stretched itself too far because it was too concentrated on having fun and going wild and doing camp and being frivolous,
Hmm.
that at no point did it go, we need to we've got to, we've got characters in the story, we've got a reputation to keep here. And that's what my point about Russell T was that he just went to go and have some fun and had too much fun and then forgot about the bits that are important to Doctor Who.
Mm.
It doesn't matter that he's got a magical sonic device. It doesn't matter that his body is magical and he can fix everything with his body and his screwdriver and his time machine. What matters is the situations that he's put in with loads of different characters in loads of different places with clever concepts, clever monsters design, clever ideas, and great character interactions and great story beats, which keep people watching. A
Mm.
load of people hate 42 as an episode.
Mm.
Actually, thematically, it's really rich. It's a really rich idea. Could, if the person you loved more than anyone else in the world, if they turned into basically a psychopath,
Mm.
would you be able to overlook?
Yeah.
How would you fight that?
Hmm.
And the thing about 42 that I find interesting is that it was made at pretty much exactly the same time as Danny Boyle's Sunshine, and there's a lot of parallels between the two of them. But anyway,
Mm.
yeah, tone is the most important thing to start with, I think, with Doctor Who, because you've already got a set of ridiculous characters anyway. Starting off with the Doctor, and then this usually young woman who steps into the TARDIS with someone who is literally 46 times their age, and just fly off into space. That's already ridiculous, but you don't have to make the whole thing ridiculous. And it's like, that whole first section of the finale, he gets out of the TARDIS and he just stands and exposits to everyone about everything that's going on. And none of it is character work. It's like, why is Rose working at unit other than the fact that you just wanted you just wanted to use that actress again?
Mm.
And we had this conversation in that, this, number one, that is a trans actress, and again, great to have people like that on screen to just, for representation for everyone and make sure people can see themselves on screen and know that nothing's a barrier. Of course, fantastic. But
She
at the
is
end of
one
the,
of the most beautiful people,
but
but
that's it.
unfortunately, she is one of the most beautiful people with one of the deadest faces.
Yeah, and that's a problem because although it's a delightful bit of eye candy for everyone to have, it's nothing
Yeah.
more than that, and that's pointless. And here's the introduction. It's so paper thin introduction of that soldier who happened to be from Manchester. So Russell T goes, "We've got a link. We like him because he's from Manchester and Ruby's from Manchester, so they get on with each other." Oh, he's dead. Just needed someone to kill for Sutek to get rid of. But I couldn't be bothered to make it worth anything really. So it's just this Manchester bloke. One that we liked because he's from Manchester. I was like, that was 4 seconds. That was 4 seconds. I don't care about this. I don't care. Harriet Arbinger, like, if you break down the reveal of Sutek, it's ridiculous because it all relies on people looking at a screen which has flickering letters revealing what the hell's going on, right?
Mm.
That's stupid. Did I care when it was happening? No,
No.
because it got the tone of that section right.
Hmm.
Did I care about the rest of it? Yes, because it got the tone wrong.
Mm.
The doctor standing in the middle of a big machine and saying time is memory, memory is time, which a is meaningless, and b laughing after it as if it's supposed to be like, oh my god, time is memory and memory is time, I've shat myself. It doesn't,
In the pool. Someone clean it quickly.
We've had to dismantle the Leisure Palace. It's this idea of going, yeah, people will go with this, and that's an assumption. And at no point in Eccleston, Smith, Tennant, even in Capaldi, did people just assume that they'd go with this. The people that everyone shits on the last season of Capaldi, but actually,
Yeah, I didn't like it.
if you watch it again, I think that more time goes on, the more I think that Bill and Nardole are one of the best TARDIS teams that there's been. And I think that they bounce off each other really, really well. I think that if you invest in them from the start, which it gives you the chance to do, it introduces them in the right ways, it gives them the right story. But, Bill's a character. Let's not.
Oh yeah. Bill's
Bill is a
well-rounded.
character.
Yeah.
Nardole is a character. They're all well-rounded characters. You get brilliant little bit of moments of, I thought I've sent you to Birmingham for a packet of crisps. Miss all of that. Miss all of that with this. It's Dr. Ruby. Doctor really likes Ruby. Doctor really, really likes Ruby. So if something's wrong with Ruby, then Doctor's gonna be really sad about it. And that's actually really important. And we should all care about that. And I go, when? When did I watch this happen? Apart from the fact that they went up into that goblin spaceship, which actually all in all for them was probably about 15 minutes of their lives. They sang a song, came back down again, and now it's like besties. And I go, just
Hey, look, I've
call
got
the
drunk at bars and
ADHD.
sung songs with people, and then I am absolutely their best friend afterwards. I'm
Sure.
I'm about to meet up with my friend who's just got engaged, and I'm going to go to their wedding because we got drunk and sung about sung in a
Sure,
bar.
sure.
So
It does happen,
it
but
does happen.
what you then wouldn't do is televise that. So
I think you're belittling the ego of actors, actually. You're,
I've written a script. Maybe you'd like to
I've
read
written a
it.
script. It's about the time that we got drunk at a bar and sang a song, and now we're best friends.
My point on the whole is that it needs to calm down, and that's where Boom was great because it calmed down and gave breathing space to moments of peril.
Yeah.
That's where Dot and Bubble was great because it calmed down and led us down a path for most of an episode, and then gave us
And then
five
the biggest slap in the face.
5 minutes of going, oh my God, I never saw it that way. And it took its time to get here. But it takes its time. It really takes its time.
Takes its time. You can notice beforehand. Sometimes there are a bit sort of inklings.
Of course you can.
There are moments where you're like, oh, okay, well, that's not okay. Okay, it might be focused a little bit on this, but you get the confirmation in that last.
But like she goes to the office and she spends time in the office, and then she goes to the lift and she nearly gets eaten in the lift, and then and goes down and has to hide and all this kind of stuff. And it's
pacing.
Brilliant pacing. Even 73 yards spends a lot of time in that pub in Wales. And that's a great sequence. I would have liked a little bit more from the rest of that, but that's probably a me thing. Whereas I think with the finale, it just decided to go surface level fast, particularly part 2. And I don't know about you, but outside of going, yeah, it's a great idea to have the mother just be a mother. That's just that's the right thing to do, I think, for this. But outside of that, and that's 3 minutes of the episode, outside of that, I just wasn't invested. Now, maybe that's a me thing, but I've spoken to a load of people about it, and they weren't either. Do you know what I'm noticing? And I think
that this has gone on for 2.5 hours.
Well, it's not actually been 2.5 hours, but we only started
Oh,
recording
an hour and a half. That's
yeah, there you go. I think this may have something to do with my quite male approach to things.
Quite male.
I know that is a weird concept, in fairness. I'm not the best example of a bloke. Of a typical bloke. I think I'm far more soppy than the average toxic masculine man. I let my emotions.
Because of all of your floppy hair.
It is, yeah. It's all in my eyes. Helped me.
Is that why you're always crying?
It just hurts. No, but even I, who is someone who loves theatre, loves performing, I find things irritating that are too in your face.
Oh, you don't like to be preached at?
It's not even preaching.
Okay.
It's every time I go and see some musical theatre, takes me 30 seconds to adjust to it.
Yeah.
And then I go, they're on a stage. There's millions of people here. it's got to be big, obviously. And then I go, yeah, you idiot. And then for the rest of it, I'm loving it. Right.
Yeah.
I'm just totally on board. I'm swept away with it. But there's a thing that happens, I think, when I'm watching a TV show, and this is why think certain actors are such good actors,
Mm.
is TV acting is a far more subtle process than stage acting, and TV stories have to allow for that to happen.
Mm.
So when I see performances in TV shows which are big
Mm.
and loud and wavy and gestury and
Mm.
huge and all this kind of stuff, obviously,
Which
so
Doctor
okay,
Who is
which Doctor Who
inherently.
is inherently, and I get that occasionally that just fits characters, and I'm not saying you can't do it because of course you can,
Hmm.
but you the best one of the best moments of the series, and it's
Mm.
underrated, is Kate talking to the doctor in unit
Mm.
about her dad and
Mm.
what her dad used to say about him. And Shooter Gatwa plays this really nice moment where he's really like subtle and subdued
Mm.
and gives a little smile to Kate, but you can still see in his face that he's hurting and things aren't quite, that he
Mm.
can't get his head around stuff and it's confusing him, which I loved. That stuff is really, really, really important to me because
Mm.
it then it lets the bigger moments that need to be big stand out,
Yeah.
but it also fundamentally adds a believability and for me a likability to the character because I don't care how interesting the Doctor's probably the most interesting character ever made
Sure.
because the amount of things that the Doctor has seen and gone through and learned and can do is beyond comprehension.
Mm.
But even someone as brilliant as that, if all that was happening was that they were shouting and laughing and being extra all the time, that would grate on me. And I think part of me saying things need to calm down is my um repressed maleness wanting things to just be a
More
little
subtle.
less extra.
The issue that I have with character is not that they're too large. It's not that we brought back all the people from the past that shouldn't be there. It's not that, we've got a lot of stunt casting, not in the way of like, oh, this person's from like TikTok or whatever, but we've got this stunt casting of like, the kid who won the BAFTA recently.
Lenny Rush.
Lenny Rush. We've got Lenny Rush, and then we've got Rose. And we've got a lot of people who have become popular through other things, and we're putting them in here. Actually, I think everybody, character-wise, is too good. I think everybody is too morally good. I think that
Oh, I see.
when you look back to like Chris Eccleston's, if we focus on Rose as a character for a second, she's actually a bit of a dick. Sometimes, like
Mm.
she actively cheats on her boyfriend,
Yeah.
basically, while she's flying around time and space. So much so that while we're with Chris Eccleston, when we get to that episode where they're in America and that English technician is in the
Adam.
Adam is there, and the doctor's like, "Oh, he's your boyfriend. I'll come along with it."
Yeah.
That's like the fifth person that Rose has
Yeah.
like had a flirtation with
All
in
my
this
all my homies stand with Mickey,
all this,
man.
and then in the next episode, she like goes home to Mickey, and she's like, "Oh, I missed you." Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
she's actually,
But then you get to Boomtown and they
but this
have
is
that
what I mean, and they
conversation.
have that conversation. But you have like that's what I call something more naturally human, okay?
Mm.
And then you also previously, when we've had people working against the monsters, people like Unit, whatever. Or, of course, you've got that Kate Lethbridge Stewart's character to sort of like lead the force. I don't know,
Mm.
but if you think back to like the Sontaran stratagem or the Poison's guy, you have those characters in unit who are absolutely leading the charge, but they are kind of problematic. They've got issues. They're very violence focused. They are inherently like kind of wrong
Yeah.
at a lot of stages.
Well, like Harriet Jones, you know.
Yeah, Harriet Jones, she does wrong, and I feel like the people that we encountered this season were either supposed to be wrong or supposed to be right. And we didn't
Mm.
necessarily have that middle ground. And we were supposed to like them or we were supposed to dislike them. If you want to point out Ruby Sunday's flaws to me, please do, because I don't know what they are.
That bugs me so much when she goes into unit and meets Rose and they're just
And
immediately
they're
the
just
best
immediately best friends.
friends.
But like, I don't know, you know what I mean? I don't know what they are. You can point out Clara's flaws to me, and that is that, she's a bit of a control freak, she's a bit of a narcissist.
Hmm.
And then you can point out Donna's flaws to me is that actually she's shouting at the world and
Hmm.
that she's, kind of very defensive and immediately on her guard. You can point out Martha's flaws to me, which are actually that she loves somebody that doesn't love her back and that actually she's doing this for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Team behind unit, they all just seem good. And every time the doctor's like, oh my God, it's this, they're like, yeah, we already know that. We're clever. And then we carry on. And then the people that we meet, they're either goodies or they're baddies.
Do you know what I think that sort of slightly comes down to, though, and it's something that we are now very guilty of by doing this, is that the writers of Doctor Who must feel that they could throw anything into the public domain and it would get shouted at and it would get screamed at, um, and that they can't actually win. And I do have a lot
Mhm.
of sympathy because they have to tailor characters very carefully to, like you mentioned,
Mm.
there is a
Cancel culture.
subsection of people who
Mm.
are so militantly
Hmm.
positional in whatever stance it is on any political spectrum that that if they can, they will try to tear the show apart if it doesn't meet their expectations. And
Hmm.
that's not, I want to make it clear that that's not what I'm trying to do here, is say that this show is rubbish and you shouldn't watch it. I'm saying that there is just stuff that can be changed to turn it into something that really gets people together again the way it did before, the way that we've seen it do hundreds of
Mm.
times. Is the reason that so many people love this show, that it can still be that after a period of it letting people
Hmm.
down. Generally it can still do that, and I love that. I love that they're trying. For one thing, I love that Russell T went, I'll come back, let's give this another go. I love that he's doing that. The reason why I'm not gelling with Shooty Gatwa yet is because the only chance they've given him to show the Doctor expression has been scenarios where the only reaction is the same thing.
Sure.
And that's where my frustration comes, because I was really actually really enjoying seeing him sort of start to let the guard down a bit with Rogue and start to, lean into that romance, because it was a side of for him that we hadn't seen as the Doctor. And then it resulted in the same thing again. It resulted in him going, "Oh, I'm sad. I'm crying." And it's like, "Yep, seen you do this before. It's good. You're good at this, but seen you do it before. And I want something more from you that makes sense." And it hasn't been given that yet. So that's my point.
So what you're saying is essentially exactly the same thing that you said at the beginning.
Mm. Well,
What a useful 2 hours.
there's a pleasing circularity to this ramble. But it has been a ramble. Don't worry, I'll be editing. I've not got work tomorrow. So
Delightful. I
I
have.
will be. Yeah, funny. I've got it over the. Do you know? I texted my boss the second the full time whistle went last night and went, "Any chance I could finish an hour earlier on
That's
Sunday?"
so funny.
And because I was due to finish at 9 and it kicks off at 8, and he was like, "Yeah, of course you can, mate." So
That's
a,
so
a
cute.
patriot at heart, but I am working all weekend, so I'll get this edited tomorrow. But yeah, I'll be editing this down big time because I appreciate that I've just rambled like a maniac.
I think we both have, buddy.
Yeah. So anyway, if you can fix Doctor Who, I think it's not unsalvageable. It just requires some tweaks, but I think they're perfectly possible.
I think it's improved since the previous season.
I concur. And do you know why Midnight's the best episode ever? Because it's not about the monsters. That's
Sure.
why Midnight is the best episode ever.
Yeah,
It's a study of the characters.
it's incredible.
So yeah, I still think the gold standard of this comeback has been Dot and Bubble and Wild Blue Yonder. I think they've been the standouts with the Doctor and Donna on the
Oh
spaceship.
yeah, yeah, that was
Um,
fantastic. That was excellent.
uh, and yeah, I think that's because they've both been about what the best episodes are always about. So I'm going to bring this long spiel in which I've basically just repeated myself for 2 hours straight
Stunning.
to a close.
Hmm.
And I'm going to do that by saying thank you very much for listening and giving a recommendation for this week. And my recommendation for this week is going to be a film called Street of Crocodiles, This is possibly my most hipstery favorite film. It's currently occupying one of the spots on my Letterboxd top 4. It is a 20-minute long stop motion short by the Key brothers from 1986 about a puppet, a marionette puppet sort of thing, who gets lured into the back streets of a confusing world and is then scared by the world starting to revolt around him. And it's astonishing how much it can convey in the space of 20 minutes. And each little image is, number one, beautifully made, but number two, telling you something glorious about the actual story. So, Street of Crocodiles is for me. Verity, do you want to recommend
Do I get a
something?
recommendation?
Yeah, go on, why not?
Okay. I think everyone should watch Are You There, God? It's Me,
Taken
Margaret.
3. Oh.
No, Taken 3 is awful. Taken 2, have no, I'm joking. I think everyone should watch Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, because I
Mhm.
think it's the perfect example of teenhood, and I think that anything with Rachel McAdams, you've got me.
Mhm.
And I think that it's something that I went into not knowing very much about, and it's now one of my new favorite films.
Well, there you go. Two very different recommendations, but
Mine's better. You should watch
too good.
mine.
I'll be honest with you, you might end up enjoying Verity's more
Yeah,
because
you're
mine's
gonna my
like
mom is really
my
good.
choice is such an art house wanky choice, but
Yeah. That's
there
because
you
you're an
are.
art house wanker.
It is, I'm afraid. But thank you very much again, V, for coming on and helping me out and giving me a
That's
plug.
all right. It's quite fun, really.
Good. I'm glad you think so. The next one, I think, there'll either
Hmm.
be an interim run of me talking by myself, or one
They're
of two
boring. You should
things.
do less of those.
I know, or one of two things will happen. I will either have that episode with Roddy and Will where we discuss, we're going to discuss the films of Alex Garland and
Lovely.
why they're flawed or good. And I'm going to do an episode with Amelia where I talk through my top 3 stop motion films. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and I will hopefully see you again very soon. Bye.
Was that for me or your listeners?
The listeners,
Oh,
obviously. I'll
you won't
leave
see
that.
me
I'll leave that in.
very
Is that for you or the listeners? But what do you think?